Chapter 1071 Upon promulgation, Chang Qiuqiao's law shall be strictly enforced. Chang Qiuqiao stood on the city wall and did not move. His fingers, covered by the bronze armor, had produced cracks in the wall. The battle in the sky was soul-stirring, but he could not do anything. What repair? Chang Qiuqiao said in a low voice, "What nonsense are you talking about now? If you can survive, you don't need to repair my car. I can even give you my car." To be honest, when Chang Qiuqiao knew that Chen Zuan had advanced to rank 1 because of his anger and sadness over Chang Qiuqiao would be lying if he said that he was not touched. There were times when they felt that this world was tumultuous. There were no true feelings. The society was very cold. Being touched was simply associated with politeness. When Chen Zuan had advanced, everyone said that they were envious of Chang Qiuqiao for having such a friend. He was lucky to have a friend who advanced due to his sadness and anger over him. Back then, Chang Qiuqiao said with a dark expression on his face, "Isn't Chen Zuan the lucky one to have a friend like me who helped him to advance?" Although he had said so, Chang Qiuqiao did feel that he was lucky. At first, he did not like Chen Zuan, as he was very disappointing and foolish. All he liked to do was slack off. He would even force Chang Qiuqiao to play truant with him. He would smack his lips when he ate. He did not wash his dishes after eating either. His feet were so smelly that the smell could suffocate mosquitoes. But Chen Zuan, who was full of flaws, was very trustworthy. Chang Qiuqiao felt that his greatest pride was choosing the species research specialization. He had met friends like Lu Shu, Lu Xiaoyu, Chao Qingxi, and Chen Zuan. Yes, friends. Chen Zuan roared angrily in the sky. His long sword had broken. Li Xiao and Nailin Ke defended against the attacks from the rank 1 patrons with their backs against each other. Li Xiao typically talked about divorcing Nailin Ke, but he defended Nailin Ke from a majority of the attacks. The patrons from the Black Feather Army were ferocious, as if they already had victory in their hands. But at that moment, there was suddenly a strange sound coming from the sky. Even the clouds dispersed. Chang Qiuqiao, who had been calmly standing on the wall, suddenly released massive waves of energy. No one expected Chang Qiuqiao to be able to advance at such a time. Back then, Chen Zuan had advanced because of Chang Qiuqiao. Now, Chang Qiuqiao had advanced for Chen Zuan. Their friendship was as bright as the sun and the moon. It was as if time had stopped on the battlefield. Chang Qiuqiao took off his helmet and calmly said, "The flapping of the bird's wings can no longer be heard." Suddenly, the rank 1 patrons in the sky lost their resonance with the heaven and the earth. They fell to the ground. Why did it seem like the power of a natural law? The young man on the city wall had not advanced to the master realm, but he had expressed power similar to that of a natural law. What was this? And how did the people here know the poems written by the King of Gods? It was an expression describing how the birds had all disappeared. But it seemed like a spontaneous action when Chang Qiuqiao muttered these words. He had stopped everyone in this area from flying. No matter whether it was the Flood of Bronze or the Black Feather Army, they were all shocked. No one expected Chang Qiuqiao to advance now. No one expected Chang Qiuqiao to not sing the Little Conch song either. He now had an even more impressive method. Chang Qiuqiao laughed. "Ha! Ha! 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 Chang Qiuqiao, you are amazing. But I still preferred the Little Conch." "Ha! Ha!" said Chang Qiuqiao expressionlessly. Chen Zuan flew down. He was going to kill the rank 1 patron, who had lost his ability to fly. Chang Qiuqiao expressionlessly chanted the next word. Before he could complete the expression, all of his spirit chi had been controlled by just one word. The flapping of the bird's wings can no longer be heard. The steps of people can no longer be found. The second sentence was much more frightening than the first. Thus, Chang Qiuqiao could not complete his sentence. It was like when he had mastered the Little Conch song back then. Only that song would produce an effect. When he advanced to rank 1, he had chosen this poem to represent his leveled-up skill. But he could only say the first sentence with his current abilities. However, Chang Qiuqiao knew that he would eventually be able to say the second sentence as well. Chen Zuan and Li Yixiao chased after the rank 1 patrons, who were falling from the sky. They knew that this was an opportunity that Chang Qiuqiao had obtained after much difficulty. They had to seize this chance. But this period of time was far too short. Even after exerting their strength, they only had the time to kill 2 rank 1 patrons. They had exhausted almost all their strength. Earlier on, it had taken 4 of them to defend against the 9 rank 1 patrons. They had all forcibly raised their strength. Now, they had to suffer the consequences. Their foundation had been damaged. They would not be able to advance to Shinsong Jing. From the dawn of the magically rich era to the present day, many people had decided to give up on their future in order to protect their beliefs. They would even give up their lives. Lu Xiu had done so. Zhao Yongchen had done so. Chen Zuan had done so. Nailan Ke, Li Yixiao, and Chen Bailey had done so as well. They had no strength to continue fighting. It was as if they were at the end of their journey as heroes. But even then, they were still heroes. Chen Zuan and the rest stood among the Black Feather Army. The Black Feather Army did not even dare to approach them. Suddenly, a member of the Flood of Bronze roared from the wall, "Who dares to go down and save them with me? I will go with you." "Me too." But at that moment, soldiers from the Black Feather Army did not pour out of the space pathway. This time, a red wave surged forth. When the Black Feather Army saw this, they were shocked. The Weiwu Army. Why are they here? A group of black soldiers from among the Weiwu Army flew into the sky. The Black Feather Army was dumbfounded. Over 50 rank 1s were in the sky. No matter whether it was the Black Feather Army or the Flood of Bronze, they all gasped in shock. It was their first time seeing so many rank 1s fly in the sky. It was very majestic. Zhang Weiyu and the rest cleaned up the patrons in the sky without any difficulties. When the Imperial Dragon soldiers reappeared among the humans, they were invincible. There were many Black Feather Army soldiers, but no matter how many people they had, they would not be able to stop over 50 rank 1s working together. They had enough power to dominate the world, but were now being controlled by Lu Xiu. The Black Feather Army started to collapse. They were about to be defeated. At that moment, one of the young men from the Weiwu Army looked up at the Flood of Bronze and shouted, "Are you the Heavenly Network? My great lord said that he is your 9th Heavenly King. He told us to come here and help you fight. He and Great Lord Xiaoyu will arrive soon. There are still thousands of Black Feather Army soldiers out there who have not been killed." Chapter 1072. Return to Earth. A new era. The Heavenly Network knew about the Weiwu Army, as they had caught the chief logistics officer of the Black Feather Army, Li Ke. Thus, they knew that Lu Xiu had been impressive in leading the Weiwu Army, but this was only limited to when the Weiwu Army had defeated Li Liang. Back then, Li Liang had not been punished by Duanmu Huangqi. He was still the leader of the Black Feather Army. When they had captured Chen Yuxuan and killed the rest, the Weiwu Army had not entered the palace. Thus, they obtained information from the soldiers of the Black Feather Army that Lu Xiu might have gone to the palace, and had become a disciple of the Sword Hut. However, there was no updated information about the Weiwu Army. Thus, Chen Zuan and the rest knew that Lu Xiu had become the commander of the Weiwu Army. Furthermore, he was not leading a weak army. Suddenly, everyone felt that there was something wrong with this information. How was this not weak? Could you call an army with over 50 rank 1 experts not weak? They were invincible. No matter whether it was the Heavenly Network or the Black Feather Army, they were all dumbfounded. They had 500,000 Black Feather Army soldiers and 21 Rank 1 patrons dealing with the Wei Wu army. They had thought that this plan was foolproof. However, when they saw the 50 Rank 1 experts, they suspected that their men were all dead. When the Black Feather Army saw the Wei Wu army, their hearts sank. Now, their hearts sank even further, as the Wei Wu army had swarmed over. They had nowhere to run. Of course, they could escape to the wilderness in Longmen Mountain. But as long as one was not foolish, they would understand that this was the home ground of their enemy. They had a large fortress and the entire world on their side. Would they be able to survive even if they ran away? Perhaps in their dreams. The entire Black Feather Army was in despair. Where had the Lord of Heaven gone? Where had the masters gone? It could not be that they were defeated, right? The Black Feather Army could only put their hopes on Duanmu Huangqi and the rest. They could only hope that they would win and turn the situation around, at least before Lu Shu reached them. Chen Zuan had been willing to die. After all, he, Li Aixiao, and the rest were surrounded by the Black Feather Army. Even if the flood of bronze rushed over, they would not be able to make it. But now, the situation had changed in a ferocious way. The Wei Wu army, who had acknowledged Lu Shu as their leader, was much stronger than they had expected. How many Class A's did the Heavenly Network have? Chen Zuan got goosebumps as he watched Jiang Weiyu and the rest fly in the air. They were amazing. The Imperial Palace soldiers were like harvesters in the sky. All the Black Feather Army soldiers fell to the ground like wheat. The ferocious Black Feather Army was at a disadvantage. They could not even retaliate. The Wei Wu army had been fighting for a long time. Li Haitan and the rest were fatigued. Even their tridents had broken due to the high intensity of battle, but these people were ferocious. Once their tridents broke, they used the prongs of the trident as sticks. They waved them in the air, creating a large gust of wind that blew away a few Black Feather Army soldiers. They had 5,000 experts who were on the same level as heavenly kings. This was the army that Lu Shu had nurtured with his refresher fruits. In reality, Lu Shu should have advanced at a faster rate, as he had skills that were different from that of ordinary people. People often underestimated the power of the celestial map. If Lu Shu had started a massacre and did not care about his ethics, he would have advanced to the master realm. But Lu Shu was not this kind of person. He did not feel that unlimited power was of utmost importance. If Lu Shu had become a butcher, he would never be able to make friends with the Heavenly Network. If someone had given Lu Shu two choices to walk to two different paths, Lu Shu would still choose this path, as this path brought him more happiness. Li Haitan and Lu Yizhao led the Wei Wu army and killed their way through. They approached Chen Zuan. Li Haitan looked at the flood of bronze on the city wall, then looked at Chen Zuan's broken bronze armor. Are you from the Heavenly Network as well? Yes. Chen Zuan tried to control his excitement. I am Lu Shu's brother. Li Haitan was dumbfounded. He asked frankly, have you given money to our great lord? Lu Yizhao suddenly started scolding him. Haitan, something will happen to you eventually. Li Haitan scratched his head. Yes. I have to hide my inadequacy by keeping quiet. Lu Yizhao looked at Chen Zuan. He realized that although the Black Feather Army had surrounded Chen Zuan and the rest, they did not attack. Lu Yizhao understood the Black Feather Army very well. If they had not been scared by the murders, they would not fear anyone. This proved how dauntless Chen Zuan and the rest were before they had arrived. Even the Black Feather Army was afraid of them. I am Lu Yizhao. Lu Yizhao introduced himself with a smile. I am a scout for the Wei Wu army. Apologies for our late arrival. Suddenly, Chen Zuan was touched beyond description. His words were very genuine. Earlier, he had said that he would survive and wait for the return of Brother Shu, but he did not expect himself to be able to do so. It was like his desire to become a heavenly king. It was simply a way to motivate himself. But now, the entire flood of bronze was thinking about the same thing. Back then, when they encountered danger at the Tiger's Back Fortress, Chen Zuan had thought that if Lu Shu was around, they would not have experienced so much difficulty. Thus, Lu Shu suddenly arrived on the back of a dragon and dropped swords from the sky. Now that they encountered danger at the Longmen Fortress, he would arrive as promised. The ninth Heavenly King of the Heavenly Network did not disappoint. They did not expect Lu Shu to appear with celestial troops and generals. They had anticipated his arrival for a long time. Lu Shu was finally about to return. At that moment, a young man and a young girl happily walked out of the space pathway. "Oh, are you almost done fighting?" Everyone looked at him. All eyes were on Lu Shu. Lu Shu looked at Chen Zuan. "Are you a class A now?" Chen Zuan wailed. "What took you so long?" Chen Zuan was only 18 years old. He was supposed to be a first-year student in the Luotian Cultivation College. But in this era, heroes would have to rise. At that moment, Chaos was sleeping on the World Tree at the Changbai Mountains. When Lu Shu stepped on Earth, it suddenly jolted awake. It chirped and flew towards Luo City. Coral, who was sitting by the World Tree, suddenly looked in the southwest direction. A leaf appeared in front of her. There were words written on the leaf. "He is back." "Yes." Coral nodded her head and fell silent once again. No one knew what she was thinking about. At that moment, Lu Shu looked at Chen Zuan and the rest. He smiled. "Don't be too quick to be happy. Where is Nie Ting and the rest? Kill these people from the West region before thinking about the past." Chapter 1073, Armor That Shook Mountains. For some reason, when Lu Shu brought the Weiwu army back to Earth, even after the Weiwu army had defeated their enemies, the Heavenly Network was still uneasy. They had no way to determine what exactly the Weiwu army was doing and what objectives they had. After all, they had not made any deals with the Weiwu army. They did not know their natural disposition. Furthermore, they were very strong. But the moment Lu Shu appeared, they calmed down, as they knew that the overall situation had been settled. Although they could not determine whether the Weiwu army was on their side, they could confirm that Lu Shu was. After so many years, everyone understood Lu Shu's natural disposition. Although he was rather rude at times, he was always reliable. When Li Aixiao saw the magical armor on the bodies of the Weiwu army soldiers, his eyes lit up. There were so many sets of magical armor. Lu Shu had probably earned big money in the Luniverse. Chen Bailey pointed to the south. Principal Nie and Heavenly King Shi headed in that direction. "Be careful. There are 3 enemy Shinsong Jings. I think that I don't have to elaborate. You know them better than we do." Heavenly King Shi? Lu Shu was dumbfounded. His impression of Shi Xuejin was that of a person who made pancakes in the courtyard at the capital. Why was he on the battlefield? Chen Zuan explained, when the Black Feather Army infiltrated the Earth for the first time, Mama Shi advanced to Shinsong Jing in just 4 steps. Chen Bailey, who was beside him, slapped the back of his head. "Who allowed you to give Heavenly King Shi nicknames?" Chen Zuan felt that he had been treated unfairly. "I wasn't the first one who did it. I learned it from someone else." Chen Bailey slapped the back of his head once again. "Why can't you learn better things?" Chen Zuan was speechless. Even though he was ferocious and had advanced to Class A, his granduncle was still his granduncle. Lu Shu gasped in shock. Was Shi Xuejin so fierce now? When the others saw Lu Shu's reaction, they were very calm, as they had the same reaction back then. Everyone had a similar impression of Shi Xuejin. A majority of the training techniques in the Heavenly Network had been created by Shi Xuejin, but Shi Xuejin was just an ordinary person. Thus, everyone saw Shi Xuejin as the first researcher in the Heavenly Network. No one thought that he would become one of their top powers overnight. This difference was far too large. It was rather difficult to accept. To be honest, Lu Shu respected Shi Xuejin, as he knew how much loneliness Shi Xuejin had to endure before reaching this stage. But it was still fine. Nie Ting understood and supported him. Lu Shu nodded his head and flew to the south, while Lu Xiaoyu went underground and followed him. Zhang Weiyu saw that victory was in their hands and led the Imperial Dragon soldiers to follow Lu Shu. Duanmu Huangqi was a thorn in Lu Shu's flesh. Duanmu Huangqi probably thought the same, but he definitely did not think that the Weiwu army and Lu Shu would become the straw that broke his back. Furthermore, this straw was rather rough. The flood of bronze watched as the Imperial Dragon soldiers followed Lu Shu and flew to the south. This scene was shocking, as the strength of the Weiwu army had far exceeded their expectations. Lu Shu did not panic. He had wanted to use the Imperial Dragon soldiers to deal with the three masters. Although their chance of winning was very low, they still had a chance. His wish of working together with Nie Ting to eliminate the three masters from the West region had come true. Furthermore, Shi Xuejin had given him a big surprise. Thus, with the entire Weiwu army up against a master, Lu Shu felt that they would be able to win with ease. As they flew, they could see collapsed mountains and split rivers everywhere. The peaks of mountains were broken. Roads had been devastated. River beds had been destroyed. These were the effects of a master attacking. If there had been civilians here, they would have died. Lu Shu felt that it was time to end this war. If they continued to fight like this, they would bring massive harm to the earth. According to Lu Shu, he had returned home. He wanted to live a peaceful life, not continue to fight and kill. With a master like Duanmu Huangqi focused on him, Lu Shu felt that he could not live his days well. He would not be able to carry out his ideas. Before long, Lu Shu could sense strong waves of energy. The waves of energy produced by a fight between masters surged like a tsunami. Lu Shu's expression grew serious. Be careful. Kill Duanmu Huangqi first. Yes. Zhang Weiyu and the rest answered in unison. They went into formation behind Lu Shu. The black armor that had been stolen from the soldiers of the sea seemed to exist to win from a position of weakness. When typical rank ones wore the armor, it was simply more durable than normal magical armor. But when dozens of rank ones wore the armor, they could attack experts who were stronger than them. Lu Shu could see Shi Xuejin protecting Nie Ting in the distance. He blocked the fatal attacks from the three masters, while Nie Ting continued to press forward, as if he did not have any worries. When Lu Shu and the rest flew closer, they sensed that the cooperation between Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin was flawless. One attacked, while the other defended. Nie Ting naturally had murderous intent. He preferred to defend by attacking. On the other hand, Shi Xuejin was more steady and did things in a systematic manner. In the past, Nie Ting killed people at the speed of lightning. He had never met any evenly matched opponents. Even if the masters from the West region fought alone, they would have died very quickly. But once the number of enemies increased, Nie Ting's weakness was exposed. He did not have enough defensive tactics. But now, Shi Xuejin was beside Nie Ting. He fiercely protected Nie Ting. Nie Ting did not have to think about guarding himself. He could focus on killing. His ferocity seemed to engulf the heaven and the earth. Even Lu Shu was scared when he saw this. The current Nie Ting was frightening. He was at his full power. But it was not the time to think about this. Lu Shu led Zhang Weiyu and the rest, creating a formation. He had worn the black armor in order to protect himself. The rank 1 experts clad in black armor seemed to form a whole. Suddenly, an unexpected event occurred. When Duanmu Huangqi saw Lu Shu and the rest, he stopped and led the two other masters to retreat. The armor that shakes mountains. Why is it in your hands? Duanmu Huangqi seemed to be afraid, but he was not afraid of the armor that Lu Shu and the rest were wearing. They were afraid of the people in the armor. The armor that shakes mountains? Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Was there a history behind this armor? Back then, he had asked Jiang Weiyu and the rest about this, but they had never seen the armor. However, Duanmu Huangqi recognized it. Chapter 1074, We cannot leave behind anyone we are supposed to kill in this lifetime. When Lu Shu and the rest had joined the battle, Duanmu Huangqi had given up on killing Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin. This was enough to see their fear. At times like this, no matter whether it was the armor that shakes mountains, or the armor that transcends hills, he would kill Duanmu Huangqi before anything. Lu Shu made his move. The Imperial Dragon soldiers moved out as well. The Imperial Dragon soldiers maintained a tight formation around Lu Shu. They were like a chessboard that was about to suppress Duanmu Huangqi. Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin had just seen Lu Shu, who had returned. There was excitement and surprise in Nie Ting's eyes. He had just told Shi Xuejin that Lu Shu would definitely return if he had heard that the earth was in trouble. As expected, he had returned. Earlier, he was worried that even if he and Shi Xuejin were able to fend off these three masters, it would be difficult for the Flood of Bronze to deal with the Black Feather Army. It was a very difficult situation, as the overall strength of the earth was no match for that of the Luniverse. But now, when they saw Lu Shu approaching from the Longmen Fortress, they subconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. The situation here was settled. This trust was built over a very long period of time. It was unconditional. When Shi Xuejin saw the Imperial Dragon soldiers protecting Lu Shu, he suddenly felt that Nie Ting had been constantly angry at Lu Shu in order to make him a heavenly king. They had fought for almost a year, but this was Nie Ting's wisest decision in protecting the heavenly network. In conclusion, his anger had not been for nothing. It was as if Duanmu Huangqi did not expect Lu Shu to be so resolute and charged directly towards him. Lu Shu also did not expect Duanmu Huangqi to lead the other two masters to retreat. A Grand Lord of Heaven had retreated while facing a rank 1 expert. With victory in hand, Lu Shu suddenly felt uncomfortable. It was as if a power-packed punch had hit the air. Stay there. Don't run away. Lu Shu roared angrily. From Duanmu Huangqi's distress, plus 999. Duanmu Huangqi grew pale. He felt humiliation that he had never felt before. It had been a long time since he had been chased by a rank 1. But this time, it was different. Just as Lu Shu had guessed, the armor that shook mountains was important. He had to figure out what was happening. There was something strange about the land of forefathers. The next moment, Duanmu Huangqi took out a purple pearl and crushed it. When Lu Shu saw the purple pearl, he felt that things were not going well. He had seen this pearl before, when he had committed a massacre on the limestone road. Back then, he had killed 12 patrons. Suddenly, 21 tattooed patrons appeared and tried to kill Lu Shu, but were dispersed by the Weiwu army. In the end, they had taken out a purple pearl and disappeared into a void. Back then, Lu Shu felt that this purple pearl was very mysterious. It could open up a space pathway. Back then, he thought that this was a method that masters could use. After all, masters could break space. But now, it looked as if this method was beyond the masters. If Duanmu Huangqi was able to create a portal and leave the earth, he did not have to rely on external help. The purple pearl was probably very precious. If not, Duanmu Huangqi would not have taken out the pearl in times of danger. Suddenly, after the purple pearl shattered, it created a space pathway like the one before. Duanmu Huangqi led the two masters and walked into the pathway. Lu Shu tried to chase them, but the space pathway had closed. A Lord of Heaven had led a mission, but his army had suffered heavy losses. In the end, they had no choice but to escape. Lu Shu, Nie Ting, and Shi Xuejin flew back to the Longmen Fortress. This time, the earth had won. They did not have to rely on any cheap tricks. But Lu Shu could not be happy. Lu Shu thought that they had come at an appropriate time. They had only taken 30 minutes to kill their way to the space pathway after it had opened. He had even used all of his invisible aura blades and used Johnson's materialization ability to open up the path. When they reached the space pathway, Lu Shu ordered the Weiwu army to enter the space pathway and provide support. He and Lu Xiaoyu would stop the remaining 500,000 Black Feather Army soldiers. This was a very courageous move. The two of them only walked into the space pathway after he had used Sparrow Shade to kill the entire Black Feather Army. But even if their arrival had been timely, some comrades in the Flood of Bronze had died. However, they had suffered few losses overall. After all, there would definitely be fatalities in war. Only strange armies like the Weiwu army would be able to completely dominate the battle. Lu Shu, who had been happy earlier, suddenly felt sad over the deaths of his comrades. Once he was used to leading the Weiwu army, he had thought that he could control the Flood of Bronze as well. The battles he had experienced could not be classified as cruel. It was not that their enemies were weak. It was just that the Weiwu army was too strong. It was said that only men who went through wars would truly mature. Experiencing war meant experiencing life and death of themselves, their loved ones, and their friends. But Lu Shu's mind was filled with the thought that the chief offender, Duanmu Huangqi, had not died. The Black Feather Army outside the space pathway had been killed. Those who had been defeated retreated into Longmen Mountain. The Flood of Bronze no longer had to do anything. The Weiwu army took over them. Weiwu army could not be more familiar with dealing with the Black Feather Army. Lu Shu had understood that Duanmu Huangqi was just a performer. No matter whether it was the 21 tattooed patrons, or someone behind Duanmu Huangqi, there was definitely someone else involved. The purple pearl was not from Duanmu Huangqi. He did not yet have this ability. The fog surrounding the world seemed to have dispersed, but water condensed once again. Now, fog surrounded the world again. But Lu Shu did not think too far for now. He looked at the corpses from the Flood of Bronze at the entrance of the fortress. Their durable bronze armor was broken. When Lu Shu saw this, he could not maintain his emotions. Something ruthless was beating in his chest. It was hard to control. It was as if there was a beast in his heart. It had been sleeping for a long time, but was about to awaken. Lu Shu looked at Zhang Weiyu. Tell the Weiwu army to gather. I will wait for you at the space pathway. Zhang Weiyu immediately knew what Lu Shu wanted to do, but the calm Zhang Weiyu did not stop Lu Shu. He had no feelings towards the Flood of Bronze. The Flood of Bronze was not an army that he had trained. But he had stopped doubting Lu Shu's decisions since a long time ago. At that moment, there were waves of energy from the space pathway. The space pathway had closed. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Suddenly, Lu Shu turned and said to Network, "Don't worry. I will not leave behind anyone I am supposed to kill in this lifetime. After I am done with my affairs in the Heavenly Network, Heavenly King Shi and I will follow you to that world. After all, I have to take revenge for them as well." Lu Shu calmly turned and looked at Nieting. That's settled then. Chapter 1075, Has there been a misunderstanding? Martyrs needed respect and a burial. After the space pathway closed, the first thing everyone had to do was to lay the deceased to rest. Some said that there was nothing more major than life and death, but some people saw responsibility as more important than their own lives. The funeral was not grand, but thousands of practitioners from the Heavenly Network sent them off. The space pathway was closed for now. The Black Feather Army had been eliminated as well. It was time for the Heavenly Network to rest and recuperate. Nieting asked Zhang Yutong to rotate everyone's days off. They were not relaxing, but the people could not constantly be alert. There had to be a balance. War was very important, but the soldiers of the Heavenly Network were not machines. They could not continue being used after simply refueling them. Nie Ting even allowed them to take turns drinking alcohol. This was an additional reward. Everyone was reasonable. They knew that the space pathway was opening more frequently. Thus, it was very important to adjust their condition as quickly as possible. During this crucial time, Lu Shu had brought the Heavenly Network a pleasant surprise. This surprise was not simply their victory. He had brought back some resources as well. Chen Zhuan, Chen Bailey, Li Aixiao, and Nailan Ke had broken their foundations during battle in order to forcibly increase their strength. They were not the exceptions. All the practitioners who were above Class D in the Heavenly Network had mastered the technique of forcibly increasing their strength. They had called this the glory bullet of the practitioners. Their lives would be at risk. Did they have to risk their lives during the war? Of course. Thus, Nie Ting did some calculations. At least 5,000 had used this technique during the battle. It was sufficient to prove the intensity of the battle. This was a huge hit to the Heavenly Network. This meant that over 5,000 people were no longer able to train. Their strength would stay at their current stage for the rest of their lives, and might even drop. What should they do? Nie Ting looked at Lu Shu. Lu Shu's heart ached, to the point that his hands started to tremble. 5,000 refresher fruits. No one would buy 5,000 oranges from a fruit stall. But it was not time for this. When they had killed the Black Feather Army, most of the soldiers had provided him with 1,000 distress points before they died. At first, Lu Shu felt that he had more than enough distress points. He might even be able to complete the 5th level of Nebula. Now, he had to spend these points. How could Lu Shu refuse to save his comrades? When he was at the Tiger's Back Fortress, he had thought about it. After the war ended, he wanted to tell Nie Ting that he would help his comrades in the Heavenly Network who had destroyed their foundation, like Zhao Yongchen, restore it. But he was thrown into the Luniverse by Dream Chooser. Things had finally settled down. Lu Shu could only grit his teeth and exchange his distress points for refresher fruit. He promised that he would earn back these distress points from his comrades one day. The process of eating the refresher fruits was conducted in secret. In order to protect this secret, Nie Ting controlled the entire process. He gave out the fruits one by one. Everyone who ate the fruit had to sign an agreement that they would keep this a secret. When his comrades ate the fruits and were pleasantly surprised at the recovery of their foundation, for some reason, they had an unpleasant premonition. It was as if a frightening presence was staring at them. They did not know whether it was just them. Lu Xiaoyu sat at the edge of the city wall and watched the sunset. Little Fury quietly accompanied her on her shoulder. Lu Xiaoyu suddenly said, "It's great to be back, right?" When Lu Xiaoyu learned that Lu Shu was willing to contribute over 5,000 refresher fruits, she was rather surprised. This was not the Lu Shu of the past. But when she thought about all the friends they would have in the future, it did not seem too bad. The sun sinking in the horizon was rather warm. Lu Xiaoyu felt as if the dark corners in her heart had been lit up. But it's not over. Lu Xiaoyu suddenly said, "It's fine. We will always accompany him, right?" Little Fury nodded its head with force. At the same time, Nie Ting and Lu Shu were in the fortress. Nie Ting looked at Lu Shu and said, "Thanks for your bronze armor. If not, the consequences would have been more severe." The magical armor had been overlooked by the people of the Luniverse, as wars had not occurred in the Luniverse for a very long time. However, when war broke out, people would understand that a reliable set of armor would save their lives. This was the value of the magical armor. If they did not have the bronze armor, the Heavenly Network would have suffered heavier losses. "Let me thank you on behalf of them," said Nie Ting, "and on behalf of the Heavenly Network." Lu Shu laughed cheerily. "We are all on the same side. But it is a pity." Shi Xuejin, who was beside them, said, "This time, over 4,000 sets of bronze armor have been destroyed. A majority of them are broken beyond repair. This means that the future flood of bronze will only have 15,000 people. Furthermore, we still have 50,000 people in the heavenly network who can fight, but do not have any armor. Suddenly, Lu Shu suddenly thought of something. His eyes lit up. That's right. I brought you some local specialties from the Luniverse. When Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin heard this, they were dumbfounded. They were talking about serious affairs. Why did he talk about local specialties? Was it the time to eat? What? All the members of the Heavenly Network, Nie Ting, Li Yixiao, Nailin Ke, Shi Xuejin, Chen Zuan, everyone held their breath in shock. They almost turned this place into a vacuum. Of course, this was an exaggeration, but Nie Ting and the rest was very shocked. They watched as Lu Shu took out sets after sets of magical armor from the Seal of Lands. It was as if he had an endless supply. Even Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin, who had seen the rest of the world, were dumbstruck. Were these the local specialties that Lu Shu was talking about? Did you understand the meaning of local specialties? From Nie Ting's distress, plus 666. From Chen Zuan's distress, plus 666. From Brother Shu, are these local specialties? Chen Zuan was shocked. Liu Shu asked, can these be produced on Earth? No. He took half an hour to take out all the armor. Nie Ting and the rest were numb. Lu Shu clapped his hands. There are 36,000 sets here that are just as good as the bronze armor. Although the color is different, I suggest that the Flood of Bronze should keep its name, as it represents honor. Nie Ting nodded his head. Lu Shu was right. The name of Flood of Bronze bore the weight of blood and honor. Now, Lu Shu had brought many local specialties from the Luniverse, giving the Flood of Bronze a new lease of life. 50,000 soldiers in the Flood of Bronze? Chen Zuan's eyes lit up. Suddenly, he was excited for the future.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, and we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.